Hello, welcome to this module, Introduction to HTML. In this module, we shall look at what is HTML. Number 2, we shall look at the history of HTML. And number 3, we shall also write a basic structure of HTML and try to understand the tags and what it's all about. Let us dive in. So what is HTML? HTML is an acronym that simply stands for HyperText Markup Language. And it is basically a way to describe or define the structure of content on the web. That is HTML in its simplest form. And when it comes to the history of HTML, let us just look at the screen. HTML was invented by a gentleman called Tim Berners, and that was in 1991. And from this documentation, which is just a link from the Boston University, the first version consisted of 18 HTML tags. But something of interest which is important for us to note is now there are currently 140 tags, but not all of them are supported by modern browsers. So hold off that thought, because at the end of this video, we shall try to understand what that is. And if we look at the timeline, in 1991, Tim Berners-Lee invents HTML. Version 1, 1993, version 1 is released. 1995, version 2 is published. 1997, we had version 3 was invented. Think about it. The most significant, or one of the most significant timeline that is really important to you to note is in 1999, version 4 came out and it was very successful. Then in 2014, we had version 5. So you will hear something, or you will hear version 5 of HTML being mentioned widely. And we shall also see what defines this version in a HTML document or a HTML page. Let us now go back to the thing that I had pointed out at the start of the video, and that is not all the tags are supported by modern browsers. And in order for us to understand this, another important link that you need to bookmark as a developer is this link, developer.mozilla.org. And if we navigate to the reference section, HTML, and under references, click on HTML elements, you will see a list of all the elements. All HTML elements have been listed. But you will notice that some of the elements have a trash can icon next to them. And if we click in one that has a trash icon, you will see this alert message, deprecated. And if we just read it, this feature is no longer recommended. Though some browsers might still support it, it may have already been removed from the relevant web standards, maybe in the process of being dropped out. So it is important for you to know that the tags that you are using, are they part of the web standards, or they have been deprecated, they have been removed, or they are in the process of being removed. So that is something really important to note. That is why you need to bookmark this link for your future references. Another link which is super important, which will give us some details about the history of HTML, is W3.org. We won't go through the entire articles, but I want to bring to your attention to these 2 paragraphs, because they will really paint the picture when it comes to the historicity of HTML and the reason behind its invention by Tim Berners. So let us go. Paragraph number 1. Tim Berners-Lee is the inventor of the web. In 1989, Tim was working in a computer service section of Sun when he came up with the concept. At the time, he had no idea that it would be implemented on such an enormous scale. Particle physics research often involves collaboration among institutes from all over the world. Team had the idea of enabling researchers from remote sites in the world to organize and pull together information from all over the world. But far from simply making available a large number of research documents as files that would be downloaded to individual computers, he suggested that you could actually link the text in the documents themselves. So that was the idea that birthed HTML. The second paragraph that I want us to pay attention to. In other words, there could be cross-reference from one research paper to another. This would mean that while reading one research paper, you could quickly display part of another paper that holds different relevant text or diagrams. So I won't finish the entire paragraph. I'll add link to all these resources in the description section of this video. But you can now start to see the thinking behind the inventor of HTML, what he was trying to accomplish initially, the problem that he was being faced with, and why he invented HTML to solve that specific problem. Let us look at the basic structure of HTML. The first thing that we need to do is open up your VS Code, then go to Files, Open, and navigate to any folder that you have created. You can create it from here on Mac. In my case, I've already created a folder called 01 Introduction to HTML. Then open that folder. Then using the Add Page icon or Add New File icon, click, then type index.html. And that creates a HTML file for us. After finishing that, I want you to copy in the text, doc type HTML. Then we have the opening tag of HTML and the closing tag of HTML. And we shall go over each piece so that we can understand what it is doing. In order for us to run our HTML file, we now need to run live server. So select the page, or even you can do it from the text. Click, then open with live server. And you can see live server is running. And we can see our text. Hello world. Hello world, welcome to my website. Hello world, welcome to my website. Another thing that I would want you to notice is on the tab, you will see the title, My First Page. And if we go back to the editor, you'll also see My Page. Before we dive in to understand what the different tags stand for, let us first set up Prettier so that it can help us beautify our text. Let me try to maybe add indentation. You will notice that when I click Save, it automatically beautifies the HTML in terms of the spacing and the indentation. On your end, it might not do the same, so let us set it up. So I will click the drop-down list, and you can see here, Format Document With. And you have the option of Prettier or just HTML language features. Let us change to HTML language feature and see how it changes the page. You'll notice that it has a different way of formatting the HTML in terms of indentation and also the spacing. So that is not what we want. We want it to be formatted using Prettier. So if we can double click to bring up the drop down menu, then Format Document With Prettier. And you can see that that is exactly what we want. Another thing that we might want to implement is formatting the document every time you save automatically rather than doing it manually. And in order to do that, you need to go to VS Code settings and then look for a specific attribute called format on save. And you can see that it has already been brought. And you only need to check that check mark on, and that's it. So anytime you save your file, it will automatically format it using Prettier. So let us try to understand what the different tags mean. So the first line, doc type HTML, and this basically describes the type of document. And you can see it is HTML, and for this specific file, it is telling us that this is HTML version 5. So that is how HTML version 5 is defined. Then we have HTML. This is the root element of HTML. So we have the opening tag HTML and then the closing tag HTML, which is denoted by the slash. The second element to note is the header or head element. And this basically defines the metadata for the HTML page. You can see that we have a meta tag that defines the character set. And in this case, it is UTF-8. I mean, it supports a lot or most of the languages in the world. So just set it to UTF. Then we have titles. Other things that can be included in the head section would be maybe links to external styles, fonts, but that is something that we shall go over in the future. Then we have the body tag, and the body tag generally holds all the visible content of our web page. And in this case, we have H1 or heading 1, which is hello world, and we have a paragraph tag, welcome to my website. So what are some of the best practices when it comes to HTML? Number 1, always include the doc type. And number 2, always wrap your HTML in the root element, which is HTML. Always include the meta character set, in this case UTF-8. I will always recommend that you use UTF-8. It is widely used and it is the most popular character set. I'll show you a graphic which actually gives you the numbers of its popularity. One tip, after writing your HTML page, make sure it is validated. And the way to validate it is by using the W3C Validator. I'll leave the link in the description section. So if we quickly navigate to the validator, you can upload the file and then it will validate for us. In this case, I'll go to Documents, Code with Kelvin, HTML, open, choose, and then check. Checking complete user. Warning, consider adding, and you can already see that some of the things that I need to include. So that is our first module, Introduction to HTML. If you learned something, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. 2 things that I would want you to do in order to keep on learning HTML. Number 1, explore and experiment how to use the heading tags. That is heading 1 to heading 6. And number 2, also explore how to use the paragraph tags. Experiment with them and see the beautiful things that you can come up with. See you in the next lesson.